Hi truth seekers and welcome back. My name's Abigail and this is where we demonstrate that regular people like me and you can guard themselves from deception by reading their Bible in context. And now for my mom.
Hi everybody and welcome back. My name is Sarah and I'm so thankful that you have chosen to join me for yet another episode of Truth Seekers. So last week we started on a new series of spiritual warfare. We did our first episode. Our first episode was more of a historical overview, just looking at humanity, where we started off and how far we have come and how we have been in this kind of battle that we said it's a spiritual battle. When we talk of spiritual battle, we said it's a battle that is happening in the spiritual realm. So it's happening in a realm that we don't see, but yet it affects us physically here in the physical realm. So we saw that humanity has been in some kind of a spiritual battle. Really, it's a battle for the humanity soul. There are these spiritual beings that are against God. And so they have rebelled against God. And so they want us to rebel against God. And so they do everything to make sure we too are on their side. We have rebelled. They want to be worshipped, and so they want us to worship them. So when we have seen so far, humanity has fallen for their trap. We have not been able to resist the devil and his minions, right? So that's what we were doing last week. We saw how from the beginning, from the Garden of Eden to where Jesus now came and he has been able to regain the authority that was given to mankind. Now he has been able to regain it. So Jesus is the one who has all authority, and that's why he has sent us as his disciples to go into all the nations and make disciples, teach them his word, to tell them the gospel. So he has all authority and he has given a mandate to us. He has given us this mandate to go to the uttermost part of the world. So just because we have Jesus as the one who has all authority, does that mean now the devil and his minions and all these other spiritual beings, does it mean that they are not operational anymore? Of course not. That is the reason why we are talking about spiritual warfare, because even now, even though the battle is won, the devil still is very much at work. But even though he is at work, the one who has all authority in heaven and on earth is Jesus, right? Jesus has all authority, but the devil will do anything to keep his kingdom operational. He will do anything to keep us from accomplishing what we have been sent here on earth to do what we have been told by our Lord to do. So that's where spiritual battle comes in, okay? So just because the devil has been working behind the scene, it doesn't mean now that humanity is not to blame. It doesn't mean that the devil made us do anything. Like we are going to be looking at the tactics that the devil used. And we are going to do this today's episode, and the next one, we are going to be focusing on the tactics that he uses on believers on the next one that we are going to do. But today, we are going to see how the kingdom of darkness operates, right? And as we are going to see, God has given us, humanity, you and me, we have been given something we call free will. That means we have the freedom to choose, and we have chosen on our own to rebel against God. Yes, the devil has enticed us. Yes, the devil tempts us. But guess who has rebelled against God? Guess who will be punished for rebelling? We. Yes, the devil will be punished for his part. But we too, humanity, will be punished. If we don't hide in the blood of Jesus, if we are not washed by the blood of Jesus, we too will be punished for rebelling against God. So yes, the devil has a part to play, and he has played a big part. But humanity also has a part to play. So that's why we want to understand how the kingdom of darkness works. We want to see how it operates. So that's what is going to be our focus today. How this kingdom that we are fighting against, how it works, who are we really against, and how can we defend ourselves? So we'll get to that place of defending ourselves. We are not there yet, but we will get there. Not today's episode. One of these episodes, we are going to talk about how to defend ourselves, how to protect ourselves. But first of all, we want to understand what we are up against, okay? So before we get started, there's a few points that I want us to have at the back of our mind, okay? The first one is, yes, Jesus did defeat the powers of darkness. Very true. Jesus has all authority. Jesus has all power, right? He is the one ruling. But just because he is ruling does not mean that the devil and the spiritual realm is inactive. It is very much still active. They're still operational. So that's the first point, right? So the Bible still speaks of the devil as the god of this world. And this we can see in Ephesians 2, 1-3. Which I'm going to read for you. It says, "And you were dead in the trespass and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all once lived in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, were by nature children of wrath, like the rest of mankind." Okay, so that is the first thing to note. So the devil is still much operational because everybody who is not a believer is still under the control of the enemy. And that's where we were before we came to faith. We were all under this power. He is called the God of this world. He is still ruling even to this moment because he still controls a lot of people. Second thing to remember, the back of our mind, the second thing is the way the devil works in unbelievers differs from the way he works in believers. The way he works, when he tries to tempt us, right? When he is working towards unbelievers, it's different. The Bible talks of him. He has blinded the minds of the unbelievers. So that's one of the tactics he uses for the unbelievers. So the unbelievers, one thing, so it ranges from him blinding their mind. And this we can see in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, which says, in their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. So it starts all the way from him convincing them that God doesn't exist, right? So if God doesn't exist, then the devil does not exist. If the devil doesn't exist, then there is no right, there is no wrong. Hell doesn't exist, heaven doesn't exist. Then you know what? We can go on to do whatever. We can indulge our selfish desires however we want because we don't have anybody to be answerable to. So this is where evolution and all those things come in. That's one tactic that the devil uses for unbelievers. Their minds are blind. They have been blinded. They can't see. They don't know the truth. Not because the truth does not exist, but because the devil has made them blind to the truth. So it ranges from that point of just blinding their mind all the way to using them as vessels in his kingdom to advance his kingdom. So they are vessels that are used, and all the way even to some to possession. Some even the devil will even possess some of them, especially those who give themselves over to the devil completely. So the devil does use unbelievers. Many of them unknowingly, they don't know that they are being used of the devil. And some knowingly, some have voluntarily surrendered themselves to be used in the kingdom of darkness, okay? So a good example is when we think of Jude. When you read Luke 22, 3-6, it says, "Then Satan entered into Judas, called Iscariot, who was of the number of the 12. He went away and conferred with the chief priests and officers how he might betray him to them. And they were glad and agreed to give him money. So he consented and sought an opportunity to betray him to them in the absence of a crowd." So this is a good example of how the devil uses unbelievers to advance his kingdom. So he uses them. Sometimes he will even possess them. Possession occurs, but even this, the reason it occurred because Judas had already freely chosen to do whatever he was being used to do. He had already purposed to do it. He had already purposed to betray Jesus. Okay, so the way the devil works towards believers is different from the way he works towards unbelievers. Our eyes, our minds are not blinded. He starts by blinding these people. The reason they don't know the truth is because the devil has blinded their mind. They don't know the truth. Okay, so that's another point to put at the back of our mind as we go through whatever we'll be going through today. The third thing I want us to have in our mind is to remember that the devil and his team can only do what God allows them to do. We have to remember that God is sovereign, meaning God is in control of everything, including the devil. Even the devil and his minions, all of them are tools that can be used by God to advance God's kingdom. God allows them to do whatever they will do. They cannot do something unless God allows them to do it. And a good example when we think of this is when you think of the account of Job. Job, we see the devil, we see Satan himself, we see Satan going to God and having to get permission from God to inflict. Yes, we know Job was a believer because we are told he was a righteous man. So he was a believer. So, but we can learn there that the devil only can do what God allows him to do, not just towards believers, but even towards unbelievers, because the devil does not have power on his own. He is a created being. So even as we go through all this, remember the devil is a created being. He can only do what God allows him to do. Okay? So the other thing to remember is that, yes, the devil does have control over a lot of people. Most people, Jesus said, narrow is the way that leads to heaven, but broad is the way that leads to destruction. There are many, majority of the people are still in control of the enemy, are still under the control of the enemy. Even though the battle has been won and Jesus has authority, most people voluntarily are under the devil. They are following the God of this world, the devil. So us carrying the mandate that Jesus has given us, it means we are going against his kingdom, right? So it means he doesn't want his followers to let go of his followers. He doesn't want to. And so this then brings us to the next point I want us to remember at the back of our mind is that the battle we are in as believers is to keep us ineffective. The devil cannot win against us, and he's not trying to win. He knows he's already lost, right? He knows once you're a believer, you are in God's hands. There's nothing he can do to pluck you out of God's hands. He knows that. But the battle we are in is so he can keep us from doing what God has called us to do. We have been told to go and make disciples. So if he can keep us from doing that, that is the battle that we are in with the devil. He wants to keep us from accomplishing or getting people saved. So if he can keep us from doing that, two things can happen. First of all, the first thing that could happen is he can delay Christ's return. Because for one, Jesus said the gospel will be preached to the ends of the world and then the end will come. So if he can keep us delayed, not do what we have been told to do. And this we can see in Matthew 24, what I just said, Matthew 24:14. Jesus said, and this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So if the devil can keep us from doing or maybe tarnish our testimony, then we are not going to be effective in doing the work we have been told to do. And then guess what? He can delay, of which we know at the end of the day, God is in control. God will come. Jesus will come when he has purpose to come. But the devil can keep us from accomplishing this task. The second thing he can keep us from is from delivering many from darkness to light. Like we said, he has blinded the eyes. The minds of the unbelievers are blinded. But God, Jesus, sent us into the world so that we can open the eyes of those who are blind, those who have been blinded by the enemy. And so we can see this concept as Paul is giving his testimony, what told him his purpose was. And this is our purpose. This is our purpose. So I'm going to read us Acts 26:16-18. That says, but rise and stand upon your feet, For I have appeared to you for this purpose, to appoint you as a servant and witness to the things in which you have seen me, and to those in which I will appear to you, delivering you from your people and from the Gentiles to whom I am sending you, to open their eyes so that they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me. So that is our calling. Just like Paul, we have been called to go and open the eyes of those who have been blinded by the devil, to deliver them from darkness and bring them into the light. So, but if the devil can keep us ineffective, guess what? We are not going to be delivering many from darkness to light. We are not going to do what God has called us to do. And so many people will end up in hell because we did not do our job. So that is the spiritual battle that we as believers are in with the devil. That's why he has a beef with us. He wants us to stay away from his kingdom, but yet it's not his kingdom. Jesus has told us to go into this kingdom of this world and get people out of it. Okay, so that's why we are at beef. So knowing then that we are in a spiritual battle, it is good then to know how his kingdom operates, to know how the devil operates. Who really are we up against? We saw that from the beginning when we talked about the history of mankind. We met our number one enemy, who we called the devil. This is the one who tempted Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. So he tempted them to eat the fruit that they had been told not to eat. This is the devil who did that. But they were not smart enough to notice that this was not a friend. This was actually their enemy. He was an enemy, right? And like we saw, this devil began as a guardian cherub. So he began as a majestic angel who was in the presence of God. But then he became proud. And after becoming proud, he wanted to be like the Most High. He wanted to be worshipped. And so he fell. He was cast out from heaven. And was cast out from heaven. And we know him as Satan. Sometimes we call him as Satan. But as we are going to see, Satan is not his proper name. Satan is a title. Satan means the accuser, right? So yes, we call him Satan, but the name Satan actually has been used for more than just the devil. It can be used for even people who accuse. So the Hebrew name for Satan has been used even for people who accuse others. So Satan, whenever time we see the name Satan, does not necessarily mean we are talking about the devil. There are those times that he's talking about the devil, but not necessarily that every time you see Satan that he's talking about the devil. It just means an accuser, someone who accuses another, okay? So even though we do see Satan mentioned over and over, the devil himself is rarely seen involved in individual levels. We rarely see the devil himself being involved that in individual level. The only two times we see him involved in individual level is when he is tempting Adam and Eve and when he is tempting Jesus in the garden, right? In the wilderness, when Jesus was led into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. So when he came to Adam and Eve, he masqueraded. He pretended to be a serpent, of course, right? But then when he was tempting Jesus, he did not need to hide. Jesus knows who he is. So we are not even told he tried to. We don't know what form he had taken, but the devil came and tempted Jesus. Both of these times, he uses his number one tactic, which is to distort the truth, right? So for Adam and Eve, he adds a lie in there. He first of all asks them to question what God had really told them, and then he twists to make it mean completely opposite of what it means. No, he knows you will not die if you do. So he distorts the truth, right? So the same thing we see with Jesus, right? He is quoting from the Bible, but he is quoting it out of its context, the context of the whole word. So he's distorting the truth. That is number one tactic that the devil uses. But one thing we are going to notice is he tempts them. Both of them, from Adam and Eve and Jesus. So Jesus was led to be tempted by the devil. So what does that mean? The devil did not force any of them to do what he wanted them to do, but he enticed them to do something against God. Adam and Eve fell, they followed him, but Jesus, of course, Jesus being God and knowing the devil from the beginning, he knew him. He did not fall for his lies. He knew very well what the devil was doing, right? So one thing we can see is the devil is very smart. He knows how to twist God's word, and he knows how to dangle a carrot in front of us to make us think that he is offering us something better than what God is offering. Right? So that's the same thing he was doing with Jesus. If only you can worship me, all these kingdoms I'm going to give you, you can just avoid the cross. You don't have to do all that. Just worship me. But yet we see that was not God's plan. That was not what God. So he's trying to show him that all that God is going to give you, I can give you without this, right? Without this suffering. So the devil distorts. So the only 2 times we see him directly attacking people is those 2 times, when he's talking to Adam and Eve and when he's talking to Jesus. And both times he uses something we call temptation. He tempts them to disregard God's word, to disregard what God had already told them, God had already spoken, right? So disregard what God wants. Do it my way. Just do it my way, okay? Even though there are other times that we do see the name Satan used in the Bible, and which we can assume is speaking of him. So there are other times that we see the Satan mentioned, but there are disagreements among scholars whether it is talking of the devil himself or not, right? So I'm going to read for us from a website here that can help us understand a little bit of what disagreements are going on here. So it's a little long passage, but a little, bear with me, just follow with me. But what about those cases in the Old Testament where almost every English translation uses Satan, such as Job 1-2, Zechariah 3, verse 1-2, and 1 Chronicles 21:1? Are these references to the arch enemy of God or something or someone else? In every case in Job and Zechariah, the Hebrew is Hasatan, that is the Satan. The English translation do not reflect this. Almost all of them just have Satan as if it is a proper name. But here it is not. It is a title or an office. In Job and Zechariah, therefore, the Satan appears to have a similar role. He accuses God's people of serving him out of self-interest, that's Job, or of not being fit to hold the holy office of high priest, that's Joshua. Either way, almost like a prosecutorial attorney, the Satan is there to convict, to point an accusing finger to believers and to say to God, you are wrong about this person. Although scholarship is divided on the interpretation of who the Satan is in Job and Zechariah, the evidence suggests that we are indeed dealing here not with just another angel, but the devil himself. Finally, in one example in the Old Testament, 1 Chronicles 21:1, the word Satan is used as a proper name, Satan, not the Satan, Satan. In this case, Satan stood against Israel and incited David to number Israel. Most scholars agree that Satan is a specific name and not a title in this verse. All right, so as you can see here from this website, Satan is mentioned 3 other times in the Old Testament, right? Even though they don't agree quite whether it's the devil himself or one of his angels, one thing for sure we know is that the Bible does talk of the devil as the accuser of brethren, right? So the devil refers to him, the Bible refers to the devil as the accuser of brethren. And this we can see in Revelations 12:9-10. So I read for you here. And the great dragon who was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world, he was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accuses them before our God day and night. So we can assume that it is very possible that those three occasions that it has mentioned Satan, that is talking of the devil. At least he's talking of the devil or one of his angels. Either way, they are against us. They are accusing these believers, these people who are either David, they're accusing Job or Joshua of not being worthy of God's favor, not being worthy of what God is doing for them, not being worthy, right? So he's accusing them before God, and we do see the devil himself does that, right? So we can say then the devil does use two tactics for sure. The first one we have seen is distorting the truth. And now we are seeing he's an accuser of brethren. And as when it comes to David, as we saw in Chronicles, he tempts him, right? He entices him to do something that God had told them not to do. Again, to go against God's word, right? So again, temptation to do what God had told him not to do, right? So, but we know the devil is not omniscient. So the devil is not all powerful, and the devil is not omniscient, all knowing, or omnipotent, all powerful, right? So we know that. So how is it that this devil has become the deceiver of the whole world? How does he do it? Yeah, this one serpent, if he's not all knowing and all wise and right, all powerful, how is he able to do this? So even though we see the devil is rarely quoted directly being the one who is involved in individual level, we do see he is called the ruler of some spiritual realm, right? So he is called the ruler of all other spiritual beings. Yes, he may not be involved in our day-to-day me and you level. Yes, he is involved in the ones he knows have the most influence, like Adam and Eve, the first man, Jesus, the second Adam. Yes, he is involved with those who have the most influence. He is very much involved. But he is also ruling other spiritual beings. So this is what we are talking about, how the devil operates. Yes, the devil does not work by himself. The devil is known as the prince of, so as we are going to see in John 14:30, it says, hereafter I will not talk much with you, for the prince of this world cometh and hath nothing in me. So he's called the prince of this world. Matthew 12:24, but when the Pharisees heard it, they said, this fellow does not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub, the prince of the devils. Right? So here we see he's being referred to as the ruler of these devils. And not just here, we are going to see a few others as we continue, that he is referred to as the ruler, the God of this world. Is referred to as the one who is above all these other spiritual beings. Yes, he's not involved in us individual level, but he is involved in directing and leading other spiritual beings who do his dirty work. Okay. All right. So in our last episode, we did see that the devil was not working alone. We did see some other fallen angels who were involved in the fall of humanity, as we read in Genesis 6, the sons of God, who we saw that they came and they did sleep with human women and resulted in these giants and Nephilims. And like we said, some people don't see them as angels, but I see them as angels. So there are these angels, these fallen angels who work with the devil, right? So these fallen angels are believed to have fallen when the devil fell. He's believed to have fallen with like about a third of angels from heaven. And this conclusion is drawn from the book of Revelation, where it talks about a third of the stars fell with him. This is Revelation 12 verse 4. It says, he still swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. So from this verse, many believe that he's talking about a third of the angels fell together with the devil when he first fell. Some do disagree. Some disagree that that's what he's talking about. But most people say that a third of the angels fell. Anyway, whether or not this particular verse in the Revelation is talking of the fallen angels or just the stars in heaven, we do see in the Bible refers to the devil having angels. The devil, it will talk of the devil and his angels, right? So it does refer that to the devil having this other group of people, of beings, not people, beings who work for him, the devil and his angels, right? So for example, in Matthew 25:41, it says, "Then he will say to those on his left, 'Depart from me, you cast into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels,'" right? So we do see that the devil is not operating by himself. He does have angels. Maybe there's a third that fell with him. Maybe it's not a third. Maybe it's just, but there are angels that fell with the devil, who work with the devil, who are doing his bidding, right? They also, Bible does talk of some of these angels are not free to roam about. It talks of some of them who are held up in chains in the bottomless pit. So this we can see, this concept, we can see it in 2 Peter 2:4. It says, "For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment." Okay. And then again, the same concept in Jude 1:6 says, "And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the day of the great day." So we do see that there are some who fell with the devil, who are held in chains, who are not free to roam about. But not all of them are held up in chains. So we do see there are some who are still free, who are still working for the devil, who are still working with the devil and working for him, because he's referenced to be the ruler. He seems to be the one above these other angels here that are referred to here. All right. So those who are held in the chains, they are believed to be those who did this act of sleeping with human women. Some, of course, will disagree because they don't think angels did that. So some other theories are out there, or who are these angels, what sin they did that caused them to be chained. But we do see there are some that were chained, but not all of them. Some are still very much at work with the devil, okay? Also, we saw that there are those other rulers that were given these nations. The nation was divided among the sons of God, and these rulers were given to the nations as a judgment to this nation, because they had rejected God. They had rejected God, and so because of it, God gave them over to these heavenly beings to rule over them. And these rulers became like the gods of these nations. So they enticed these people to worship them. And so these nations started worshiping these gods, little g, of course, right? But even these, they seem to be under the rule of the devil. The devil seemed to be the one, because why? He is, again, we read this verse that says he is called the God of this world. So it seems like even these other little gods are all under the rulership or the authority of the devil. So this is 2 Corinthians 4:4, which again says, "In their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel and of the glory of God, who is the image of God." So these beings, whether they are angels or not, they are heavenly beings who are ruling. They are ruling territories. Yes, they are controlling big portions of big areas, but they are all under this authority of this evil devil that we call the devil, right? This great serpent, the dragon, the serpent. He seems to be the one who is ruling over them. Not just them, but we do see also there is the mention of other powers that are mentioned in the Bible. So you will see many different names speaking of these other powers that I'm talking about. Terms like the evil spirits, familiar spirits, lying spirits, shades, unclean spirits, demons, right? So we are going to group them all together and just call them demons or spirits, right? So there are three main views of who these demons are. three main views. The first one, some will say they are the fallen angels who fell with the devil. The ones we spoke about, they are that fell, that we believe was a that fell with the devil. So some will say those are the demons that we speak about. Others will say these are disembodied spirits who are the spirits of the dead Nephilims. Remember the Nephilims who resulted from the angels and the human women. They resulted in Nephilims. They gave birth to Nephilims or giants. So the spirits of these are, some people will say they are the demons. Others will say they are disembodied spirits of evil people who have lived before. So these evil people who did evil things, apparently their spirits did not go to rest, and so they are roaming about. So that's another view of when people say these demons. There's a website that kind of talks of what personally I lean towards. So this website, I'm just going to read for you. It has a little bit, explaining a little bit where they come up with this. So it says that first, that the devil and his angels are the angels who originally rebelled at the time of Satan's fall. So within that group, some seem to have left their domain and went after strange flesh. So Jude references is to the homosexual act of Sodom, but they were used as an example to back up how the angels who went after strange flesh, which is in this case was human women, they have been bound for this particular wickedness, while the other fallen angels along with Satan are still unchained and still cause a lot of grief around the world. The offspring of those watchers who left their domain, called the Nephilims, were destroyed in the flood, but their spirits became the evil spirits upon the earth. So according to that website, so that one leans more towards them being the disembodied spirits of the Nephilims, right? So the ancient writing of Mesopotamia, the book of Enoch, refers to them as the evil spirits, these giants who died as the evil spirits. So that's why I personally lean towards. But whether or not they are that, whether they are the dead Nephilims or whatever, the evil spirits of the dead, who are evil, the evil people who had died, I think the Bible does make a distinction between them being the fallen angels and the distinction between fallen angels and demons, right? So one thing we can see for sure is that when we're talking about the demons, they do seem to need a body to inhabit. And a good example would be when Jesus cast demons from this man, they begged Jesus that they should go to the pigs. This we find in Matthew 8:30-31. It says, now a herd of many pigs were feeding at the same distance from them, and the demons begged him, saying, if you cast us out, send us away into the herds of the pig. So we do see here they need a body to inhabit. And Jesus would go on to talk about how these demons, they just wander around seeking rest. They don't find rest. They just wander around. They don't have their own body. And so that's why they need something to inhabit. So Matthew 12:43, Jesus would say, when the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places, seeking rest, but finds none. Right? But when we are talking of the angels, the fallen angels, they seem to have the ability to take on physical form of something. For example, when we talk about them procreating with humans in Genesis 6 that we have already mentioned, right? Over and over in the Old Testament, we see angels appearing like men. And it is, we are even told to be careful not how we treat strangers, because we might entertain angels unawares. This is in Hebrews 13:2. So it seems like there is a little distinction. Even the Bible will speak of demons, and the Bible will also speak of angels. The devil and his angels also speak of demons. So there seems to be a distinction between fallen angels and demons. Either way, whatever they are, we cannot know that for sure, say with this is exactly what they are. But whatever they are, we see that they are very useful in the kingdom of darkness. And some of the things that we see demons doing in the Bible we see them tormenting people. We see them that we can see a good example is King Saul. King Saul, once the Spirit of God left him, we are told that an evil spirit was sent by God to him. He would come and would torment him. And he would have to have David come and play the harp for the evil spirits to leave, for him to, so he would be tormented. So they would torment him, right? So this one we can read in 1 Samuel 18, 10 to 11. Which will say, the next day a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he ravaged and he raved within his house while David was playing the lyre, as he did day by day. Saul had his spear in his hand, and Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. But David evaded him twice. Okay, so the point there is, there is this evil spirit that would come upon Saul and would torment him. But the funny part of it is that we are told that it came from God. So does God have evil spirits that he sends? Right? So the point being made here is this evil spirit came at the permission of God. God had to allow this evil spirit to come. Right? So even the evil spirits, even the demons, even they are all under the control of God, and God can use them for his good and for his purposes. So in this case, he allowed this evil spirit to come and torment Saul after the Spirit of God had left him. Okay. Another thing we see these demons, these spirits doing, we see a good example of the concept of the lying spirit. This example we see with King Ahab. So King Ahab was given a false prophecy by his prophets that he would listen to. And then because he did not want to listen to the true prophet, because he thought he never tells him the good things, so he wanted only to hear from these other prophets. And so they told him, no, you'll be fine. You are going to go and you will come back safely. And then only to come to find out that God had sent a lying spirit upon this false prophet, so that they prophesied to him what he wanted to hear. What he wanted to hear was that he was going to be victorious. And so God caused a lying spirit to go upon him. This we can read in 1 Kings 22, 19 to 23, that says, and Micaiah said, therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the hosts of heaven standing beside him on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who will entice Ahab, that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said to another, and another said to another. Then a spirit came forward and stood before the Lord, saying, I will entice him. And the Lord said to him, by what means? And he said, I will go out and will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, you are to entice him, and you shall succeed. Go out and do so. Now therefore, behold, the Lord has put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these your prophets. The Lord has declared disaster for you. So again, here we see who allowed this spirit to come. God himself. God sent this lying spirit upon, because he was going to judge this king, Ahab. It was time for his judgment. So God used this lying spirit for his purposes. So we can see this. So this evil spirit, wherever they are, demons, we see them being used at the grassroots. We do see them even pretending to be dead relatives of people, especially who practice necromancy. Those comes as familiar spirits, right? Which was a practice that was very much spoken against in the law. They were told not to practice that. So those who speak to the dead, who are they speaking to? The demons. We also see in the New Testament that these demons would even cause diseases. Some diseases were attributed to these demons, seizures, and all kinds of diseases that were being treated. And a good example is Luke 13, 10 to 11, which says, now he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath, and behold, there was a woman who had had a disabling spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not fully straighten herself. So this woman had a spirit that was causing her to be disabled. And this demon was causing disease to her. Not just that, we do even see them not just oppressing people, but even possessing people, right? A good example, like the one we spoke about, those demons that were cast out of men. Another, so here I'm going to read for us in Matthew 8:28-30, which says, "And when he came to the other side, the country of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men met him, coming out of the tomb, so fierce that no one could pass that way. And behold, they cried out, 'What have you to do with us, O Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?' Now a herd of many pigs were feeding at some distance from them." So these are the same ones that these demons would be cast out from this, and they would beg Jesus so that they can be sent to the pigs. So we see these demons, they are very much used by the devil at the individual level, at the grassroots level, right? They are very useful in this kingdom. And so the point here that I'm trying to make is that the devil himself may not yet, yes, be involved in every individual's affairs, that individual level, but he is involved, especially with the high-ranking people. The more influence you have, the more the devil will send his high powers. But regular people, he has other spirits and demons that he uses to torment other people who are down here, the grassroots, right? So the reason that we are in a spiritual battle with this demon, with this devil, is because he has many on his team. He has so many evil spirits. He has many fallen angels. He has these rulers that are working against us, right? So, and yet not just them, he has even human beings he's using. Like we said, most people are still under the control of the devil. And so he uses them to advance his kingdom. So he's using these evil spirits, and he's using spiritual things, but he's also using physical things, physical people, who many of them are being used unawares. But we do see some who willingly offer themselves to be used of the devil. You will hear of celebrities, many of them talking about how they sold their soul to the devil, right? For fame or for whatever. So we can understand the point of the devil is to thwart the purpose and the plan of God. That's his agenda, right? So we are fighting against a structured system. It is a structured system that has many playing parts. And so this makes sense then when we read Ephesians chapter 6, where Paul is telling us, we wrestle not flesh and blood. But it says what? But against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places, right? So when we talk of the devil, we are not just talking of that just one angel that fell. We are talking of a whole system that is behind him, that he's working with. We are talking on, that's why, yes, he may be one, he may be very insignificant, but he has a whole group of beings behind him, and that's why he's able to deceive the whole world, because he has a whole lot of people, a whole lot of team behind him working for him. So yes, we have the enemy, but it's not just one enemy. These powers and rulers and authorities that are in heavenly places, right? So now that we know how the kingdom of darkness operates, it's not just one being that we are fighting against, right? He has many parts that are all working towards the same goal, that are all for him, working with him. Why do we need to know that? Right? What is the point of all this? Why do we need to know the tactics of the enemy, how he operates? Why? Number one is because we are in a spiritual battle. Whether you and me know it or not, we are in a spiritual battle. The devil is out to get us. The devil will do anything. That's why the Bible warns us in 1 Peter 5:8. It says, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. So the devil is out there, and we have to be alert. We have to be awake, right? We have to be watchful, because he is looking for someone to devour. So for us to be able to protect ourselves, first of all, we need to know how he operates. We need to know his tactics. The second thing is, the Bible does tell us not to be ignorant of his devices. In Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 2:11, it says, so that we will not be unwitted by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his designs. So for us not to be used of the enemy, for us not to fall for his tactics, then we don't need to be ignorant. We need to know his devices. We need to know how he operates, right? So we can know him from afar, which leads us then to the third point. When we know how the devil operates, then we are better protected. We are able to protect ourselves. We can recognize him from afar. We can see from afar and see, oh, this is the devil. He wants to keep me from doing this. So the point why we need to know the tactics of the enemy is because he's out to get us. He's seeking for an opportunity to bring us down, to keep us from doing the work we have been called to do. And secondly, because we have been told not to be ignorant about his devices, right? So we need to protect ourselves. And the only way we can protect ourselves is by, first of all, knowing what are his tactics. What does he do, right? So when we think of spiritual warfare, a lot of times we think of just supernatural things, weird things happening to us, right? Lights flickering or doorknobs opening by themselves, whatever it is. But as we are going to see, the devil, when it comes to attacking believers, he is very subtle. He is very subtle. It just begins from normal things that you wouldn't even think twice about to oppression. The devil can oppress us if we allow him. So as we go through this next week, we will be looking at how exactly does he attack us as believers. What are some of the tactics that he uses for us, we who belong to God, right? We who are in Christ. What are some of the tactics that he uses, right? So we have seen, yes, he does tempt. That's a big temptation. That's a big thing that he does, temptation. That's his number one tactic, to tempt us. But yet, even when he tempts us, God tells us that he will not be allowed to tempt us beyond what we can bear, right? So 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, no temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it. So yes, we are not of his kingdom. He knows that. We are not of his kingdom. So there is so much that he can do. And even when he does it, we are being told here that God protects us. God gives us a way out. So as we go through next week, we are not learning all this so that we can fear the devil. That's not the point of it, right? We just want to know his tactics. As we go through it next week, you're going to see he uses subtle ways. So we need to be alert, we need to be awake, but we need to know that we don't belong to his kingdom and we have a God that protects us. So yes, he's going to allow temptation to come our way, but even when we are tempted, he gives us a way of escape, and he will not let us be tempted beyond what we can bear. So yes, we are in a spiritual battle. That we can all agree. And we have seen the reason we are in a spiritual battle is because the devil is the God of this world. And so he wants to keep his kingdom. He wants to keep his people. And yet we have been told to go into his kingdom and get people out of it, to get people from the power of darkness into the light. So you can imagine why he is mad. He doesn't want us to do that. He cannot defeat us. He does not have the power and authority over us, but he can keep us from doing and accomplishing what we have been told. So again, Jesus has won. The battle is already won, right? The battle is already won. Now we have been sent out and we have been told, be fruitful and multiply. So we have been told to tell others about Jesus, right? So the devil will do whatever he can to keep us from being fruitful, to keep us deceived, to cause us not to do our job. So we if we don't tell the unbelievers about Jesus, they are not going to know. So they will go to hell with the devil. The hell was made for the devil and his angels. It was never made for man. But they will go there if we don't tell them. And so the devil wants as many people to go to hell with him. And he can do that by keeping us from doing what we have been called to do. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you have learned a thing or two. We are fighting against a structured system, against powers, against rulers, against authorities that are in heavenly places. But we are fighting from the side of victory. The battle has already been won. So we are going to see what tactics he uses next week on us believers, so we can better prepare ourselves and protect ourselves from his devices. So anyway, I love you. And I pray that God will continue to stir up your desire for more truth so that you can be a truth seeker. Until we meet again, God bless. Bye-bye.